Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. We are wrapping up our fuel system revamp, or our injection system revamp on the flatbed, and this will be part 3. Right now, we're going to get this injection pump off and swap on our new R&D 80cc pump, which can be turned up to 90cc specs, and that is the plan down the road. For now, we're going to run it at 80 and see how it does. But yeah, we are going to start off by getting this pump off. If you caught part 1 and part 2, we've already put injectors in. I've already resealed this gear cover to the block. And now all we got to do is get this pump off, get it swapped on, get the hard lines put back on it, and we should be good to fire this thing up and get it timed. So yeah, gotta quit wasting time. Let's get at it. When doing an injection pump on the IDI, you do not unbolt this cover from the block. It needs to stay in place unless you lock the gear in place, which you can watch the first video in this series to see what I'm talking about there. Because if you remove this cover, you will lose timing between the gear that drives the pump and the gear set below. Lining them back up after that happens is either requires tearing the whole front of the engine apart to get the timing cover off, or I've heard people using little mirrors and such slid down in there trying to see the dots and hoping for the best. Some have gotten lucky doing that, some haven't. But yeah, the ticket, you leave this cover in place. The gear on the front of the pump comes off the pump really easy, and it stays in place in the housing. It cannot move. There's not enough room in the housing for it to jump time, so just don't move it around much. You won't have any issues. You've got 3 nuts on the pump, one here, one down here, and one down here. They're pretty easy to get to with everything out of the way. And you've got 3 bolts right here. These aren't torqued very tight. I think the spec is like 25 foot-pounds or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But that is it. If, like in my case, I have the lines off because I was resealing this cover and it made it easier to manage putting the pump back in place. With the lines on, you can pull the pump off with the lines on. It's not hard to do. You take them off the injectors and leave them attached to the pump. Unbolt the pump, unbolt the gear, and you can work the whole assembly up and out. You just got to be careful not to snag it on anything and not to bend the lines up. But it is doable. Anywho, I'm going to go on and get this pump pulled off and get ready to drop on our new goodies. Our timing gear bolts are 5/16 12 point. I just use a 1/4 inch ratchet with an extension on it. They're not super tight. They don't have to be. When it goes back together, a little blue Loctite. Torque them to spec. I think it's like 25 foot-pounds. I'll double check that before I torque it down. But yeah, I went on and loosened them up, so I'm going to spin those out by hand, and then I'll take the nuts off the back side, and the pump will just slide right off the back. The gear will stay in place. And there we have it. Note the location of the notch compared to the bolt holes, because you will have to clock the new pump the same direction, and that orients to the little dowel pin that's in the gear. But pretty simple, really. Now I am going to change over my fittings and everything, the return fitting, the fuel feed fitting, and all that stuff onto the new pump, and then we'll set the new pump in place, line up the factory timing marks, which won't be quite right, but it'll get it running, and then we'll get this thing put all the way back together, hopefully. Got the pump all set up. All the lines are on. Now we'll work this down in place all as one assembly, so you don't have to worry about tightening these lines down in the valley. But yeah, should be pretty straightforward. I'll go on and drop that in and show you the results. Injection pump is on. All the lines are hooked up. And our base timing is set. So I'm gonna go on and start spinning this thing over. I'm not gonna video that process. Get fuel up to it and see if I can get it to fire off and see how it runs. Timing's definitely gonna be off. I've got a timing meter and everything. I'll hook up to it once it's all said and done. Get the timing dialed in on it. But mainly, I just want to make sure it starts and runs and doesn't sound like the timing's way off or anything like that. So yeah, I'm gonna do that, and I'll bring you back once we get there. Well, that is going to wrap this up. It starts good, it runs good. I've got some little issues to work out. I've got a couple little fuel leaks I need to sort out, but that was on me. But yeah, overall, really happy with how it drives and how it runs. Power-wise, with the 80cc pump and stage 1 injectors from R&D, I would say equivalent to late 90s Power Stroke in stock form, which is pretty well what I was after. So yeah, it worked out. The spec sheet that came with the pump did give details on how to turn it up to his 90cc spec, which may happen eventually, it may not. For now, I'm pretty happy with it as it sits, so I'm gonna leave it be. But yeah, overall, really happy with the performance. No issues so far running on my fuel. No difference at all in power output, smoke, engine rattle, nothing. There was no difference at all switching between fuels. So the pump doesn't seem to have any issues keeping up, like as far as the lift pump goes, keeping up with this pump. But yeah, with all that said, I'm gonna call it done. If you got any comments, questions, complaints, drop them in the comment section below. I try to answer those as quickly as I can. If you would, hit that thumbs up button. Helps us out quite a bit. Doesn't cost you anything. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We appreciate you watching.